So I want to give credit for this segment to Nathan J. Robinson from Current Affairs. By the way, check out Current Affairs magazine if you haven't. Current Affairs is amazing. It's a great lefty outlet. They have really thoughtful takes, and Nathan J. Robinson does a wonderful job. But Nathan J. Robinson sparked this segment, as well as credit to David Dole from The Rational National, who also has a great show that you should check out. PBS did an overview of the Democratic primary, and they have some glaring omissions here. What David Dole from The Rational National did is he clipped out, it was a long segment, and then he clipped out the segment so you could see all the mentions of the different candidates. And in their grand overview of the Democratic primary, they don't say a word about Andrew Yang, Tulsi Gabbard, or Bernie Sanders.
There are twists, turns, 2 in and 2 out, with 2 months to go until the first votes. Yamiche Alcindor brings us up to speed on the race for the White House.
This is a Democratic field in flux. Candidates on the rise are shoring up weaknesses.
Mass incarceration must end. It's that simple.
Candidates whose campaigns are lagging are looking for a second wind.
What are the challenges for you as a small business owner?
Our kids are watching.
And still other candidates are dropping out entirely. Today, it was Montana Governor Steve Bullock who left the race. Yesterday, it was former Pennsylvania Congressman Joe Sestak, South Bend, Indiana Mayor Pete Buttigieg, former Vice President Joe Biden. The Hawkeye state is also key for California Senator Kamala Harris. Meanwhile, a new campaign ad for Minnesota Senator Amy Klobuchar in Iowa was a focus too for New Jersey Senator Cory Booker. The tenor was different at a weekend Iowa stop for Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren.
Joe Biden is ahead in all of the national polling and has had a pretty consistent lead. Pete Buttigieg's problem, as you pointed out,
has been Elizabeth Warren's surge. And then we're talking about Mike Bloomberg, who's been spending all this money. I mean, he spent $50 million.
That's the rule, not the exception to the rule. The rule is don't talk about Bernie, don't talk about Yang, don't talk about Tulsi. The reason why this segment is important is it's actually indicative of the rest of the coverage in mainstream media. Now, yes, sometimes they mention Bernie because he's polling second, so they have to. But they try their best. It's like they bend over backwards to not mention him. Now, why? Why? Because that's an important question. Listen, it all goes back to Noam Chomsky's manufacturing consent. It's not a smoke-filled backroom conspiracy. It's that the decisions are really made in the hiring process. They pick people at all these outlets who they know will not rock the boat and will go with the default lazy establishment narrative. And so in the eyes of all these people, they genuinely believe, like, well, I mean, sure, we might not cover Bernie as much. We might omit him from our overview, but does he really have a chance? No, he's not serious. He's not a serious candidate. Because everybody around me has always been saying my entire life in the DC bubble that he's got no shot. So, I'm going to give him coverage that syncs up with that reflects that reality. Tulsi and Yang, are you kidding me? Yang. Who's he? Random entrepreneur running for president? He's not a serious candidate. Tulsi, I mean, we all know this is their mindset. Their mindset is like, well, she's definitely not a serious candidate, and also she loves dictators. So, ridiculous. Ridiculous. Step aside. This is the mindset. It's the same reason why Wolf Blitzer is on CNN for hours a day. Because it's like, okay, put him out there. Blitzer will always read the teleprompter. Blitzer won't rock the boat. Blitzer won't say anything remotely interesting. And so you get this reflection of reality that's the reflection that the 1% want you to believe. The reflection that the corporations want you to believe. But they have a problem this time. The problem is the anti-establishment candidates are real contenders. I mean, obviously Bernie is. He's number 2 in the polls, but Yang was topping Kamala in the polls. Kamala just dropped out. I mean, think about that. They didn't mention Yang in that once. They didn't mention Bernie in that once. They mentioned Kamala a bunch of times, and she dropped out. She just dropped out. Now, obviously, this was before she dropped out. But what does that tell you? Even a campaign that has obviously imploded and has no message, still a serious candidacy. How? Why? Based on what? because that's the lazy assumption of the people who are part of the establishment. So the bias is astounding, but I should be thanking them, and David Dole should be thanking them, and all the lefty outlets should be thanking them, because they've left open this lane for any truth tellers to step in and keep it real and talk about the candidates who are actually interesting. I said it before, I'll say it again. If I can't succinctly explain why I think you're running for president, you're ridiculous. You shouldn't be in the race. You asked me why Yang running, UBI. You asked me why Tulsi's running, and regime change wars. You asked me why Bernie's running, Medicare for all, and the corruption, fight back against income inequality. Very clear reasons that are like the main themes of their campaigns. You asked me why Kamala was running, because she wants Kamala elected. That's what I say. I don't know what's her main policy thing. She's been all over the place. A little bit of this, a little bit of that. The Onion went after her the other day and made that same headline. Said, like, Kamala promises to continue her dream of a little bit of this, a little bit of that. If I can't name why you're running, then obviously you're just in it for the self-aggrandizement. You just want the title of being president. But what's amazing is that without fail, that's who mainstream media pushes out there, is the ones who believe in nothing, who will fight for nothing, who just want basic little tweaks around the edges of the status quo, and they think that's enough. Well, why is it that the other candidates are resonating? Because that's what the people actually want, is they want real change. Guys, they elected Donald Trump. Donald Trump won the presidency in this country. Obviously, any people who rolled the dice on that guy, obviously they're looking for, like, serious change. So when you have candidates who are really going to shake stuff up, they definitely deserve to be covered like they're serious. And also, let's just be honest here, that the numbers on their own reflect that these people are serious. And boy, is it telling when the numbers show it and they still ignore them. That says so much. It really does. And I have to say that even though I don't think it's purposeful, it ends up being the exact kind of strategy that one would need to try to take down these candidates. It really does. The strategy is indifference. And when it came to Trump, it's funny because Trump got a lot of media coverage, but it was mostly negative coverage. But like half the negative stories were just from a silly angle, and they only helped Trump. But, you know, they may have caught on that endless outrage coverage might benefit these candidates. So then what do you do in the face of that situation? You just don't cover them at all. Be indifferent. So if people don't know, if you're a casual follower of politics and you don't follow it too closely, you might not even know that some of these candidates are running. That's the best case scenario to them. But the disrespect that's put on their name, and that's why they have to work twice as hard as everybody else. They have to go around the system. They have to use new modes of communication. And that's where new media comes in. That's where independent media comes in, social media. That's the way you have to get out the word, because they're never going to give you a fair shake in mainstream media. Even PBS. PBS is not as bad as the others, but even them, even they've fallen victim to this lazy default establishment bias, which predetermines who's serious and who's not. Well, they've been wrong many times, and they will continue to be wrong. Remember, guys, CNN in their power rankings, you know who their top two were? This wasn't even that long ago. Number 1, Kamala Harris. Number 2, Beto O'Rourke. Both of them didn't even make it to Iowa. Perhaps these guys don't know what the hell they're talking about.